Welcome to Read the Book First, a book to movie adaptation podcast. Today we'll be discussing Big Fish by Daniel Wallace. And to help me break down this novel of mythic proportions is Isaac.
Hello from California. Have we done one where I've been out here yet?
This is our first episode that we're recording in the house, not via Zoom. So if you hear our AC, we're in Southern California, and I'm not turning off the AC.
Yeah. I'm not really a religious person, but I will be religious over having access to AC down here.
Amen. Today we will be talking about Big Fish, and I have not read the book before reading it for the podcast, but I had seen the movie. It came out in 2003, but I don't think I saw it until I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I think I just either got it from Blockbuster or the library and watched it, and I remember visuals and I remember understanding parts of it, but I remember also not really understanding it because I was in 5th or 6th grade. Going into the book, I knew it was going to have to do with like tall tales and an old man, but that's kind of it. So I kind of went in with almost fresh eyes. Like I knew the vibe.
Yeah. I think I went in with even like less because I remember seeing this as like one of the DVDs in my parents' collections. But really all I knew about it was like, oh, I think there's some like magical realism and it's good. And I think that was about it.
Whenever I read a magical realism book, I forget how much I love magical realism. Because it's hard to market magical realism without giving away the kind of spin of it all. And magical realism books I've read, the ones that lean more towards like thriller or horror, those ones are easy to market because it's like, oh, the house is going to eat you, you know, but really the house is a metaphor for like generational trauma, right? Yeah. Like those ones are easy to market. But I think when you get to magical realism that is not attached to like horror or thriller genres, they're harder to market. Like this one, it's like, it's about a dad and his son and kind of it's about the myth of him, right? Or the myths that we tell each other. But it's like, what's about the big fish? It's like, okay, well, that's a whole thing throughout, like a whole theme throughout the book, right?
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the book. I don't know about you.
I liked it a lot. I think, the magical realism is always an interesting one. Or I guess my thing with magical realism is sometimes it's like, okay, when is it actually magical and when is it just metaphorical, like a great device for storytelling and they're leaning into it, but there's actually no real fantasy, or fantasy is too much, but there's no actual like abnormalities or supernatural or
I think that's the difference between magical realism and fantasy,
is that
or fantastical elements in the story, is that the boundary between the reality and the fantasy is so blurred that some points in the novel of a magical realism novel you cannot tell if we the readers are supposed to take it as literal or metaphorical, but then there's some points where like, oh, we know this is metaphorical, but the characters believe that this is literal, you know. And I love that nuance and confusion, and I need more magical realism because I can like name like 5 of my probably top 50 books I've ever read are magical realism. And I'm like, why am I not reading more of that?
I think I only really read one like in high school that was like a mandated read, and I'm forgetting it now.
Big Fish. One thing I really enjoyed about this book is that it's kind of a bunch of short stories.
It's kind of vignette-y, but also
but they connect.
They're connected. There's like a scaffolding of a story throughout, and you have it coming back. Yeah.
And reading this, you can tell that the author loves myths himself because like even the title is a pun and a play on words, right? Big Fish, a novel of mythic proportions. This book is small. It's short.
I finally stopped saying real big fish by the end of reading it. I got it out of my head, which I think is a thing that Edward Bloom would have thought was somewhat funny. Yeah. So it got real meta there in my brain.
Yeah. The chapters are these myths, these stories, almost fairy tale like stories about the main character's father, Edward Bloom, and like throughout his childhood and into his adulthood. And then there are the quote real scenes between the main character, William, our narrator, and his father, Edward Bloom, on Edward Bloom's deathbed.
it's like a very elongated deathbed. It's more like, oh,
Yeah, which is interesting because when I first read it, because the chapter titles say "My father's death," take one,
yeah,
take two, etc. There's four
yeah,
of those scenes, and when I was looking at the chapter titles, I was like, oh, I wonder if he's playing. Oh, this is one version of his how he dies. This is
yeah,
version two of how he dies, like adding to the myths of it. And so when I read the first two, I thought because the scenes are very similar, right? They take
yeah,
place in the room in the house where his dad is bedridden and he's his son is talking to about the same doctor. Like they mimic each other.
yeah,
Like the doctor's old. I don't know why he's still a doctor. Oh, my mom went in. She came out crying, saying that I should talk to him.
yeah,
I go in. He asks for water. We have some sort of conversation about either jokes or
yeah,
reality or fatherhood, and it mimics each other. And by the third take of it, I realized, oh, these are different days. These
yeah,
are not. But like you can kind of read it as like these are different versions because they're
yeah.
all very similar at the same time.
The first three.
The first three. The fourth
Yeah,
one, then you get to the fourth one where it ends up being at the hospital,
yeah,
which is different. And I really enjoyed that as like a crafting
yeah.
thing because you're like it plays on the whole idea of myths and storytelling.
It's almost like it, not in an intrusive way, but it definitely the author kind of just is like, oh yeah, look at this cool thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Every now and then.
So in part one of the novel, it's a lot of the myths of the beginning of Edward Bloom. So we have the first chapter is the day that he was born, right? So the setting is in general Alabama.
Yeah, which I guess there's a couple things just generally about this book that I didn't realize when I picked it because I knew it was like an acclaimed movie and it was going to be an interesting
And it's a
read.
shorter side.
Yeah, so not too bad. But I guess I didn't realize how much it was focused on like grief adjacent. It's like, or it's kind of or the grief to be, I guess, is.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't say this is about grief in the way we typically think about it.
Yeah.
I think it's about like kind of understanding a complicated person and your complicated relationship with them,
Yeah.
right? In a grief way, right?
But it is weird because it's not like, oh, the dad dies and then it's 90% of the book is processing.
Yeah.
It is kind of like almost, yeah. It's kind
it's
of
the lead up to that.
yeah.
It's very connected to grief.
I guess it's just to be more accurate, yeah, it's more just the dealing with an impending death and
Yeah.
the emotions that might bring up. So I didn't have that on, like,
Yeah.
wasn't thinking about that when we picked it. The other thing is Alabama. Like, I'm not from Alabama, but half my family's from northern Alabama, and I've spent a ton of time in my childhood down there and everything. And so, it was interesting where a lot of these like metaphors did kind of really
Yeah.
hit for me, or like these this small town, like, yeah, my granddad lived on the rural side of the mountains from Huntsville. It was like the middle of nowhere. And then, getting out to Auburn, Alabama, like, well, yeah, I've been over there. And
The
seen all
amount of
that.
talk
Yeah.
of Auburn, I was like, all the Auburnness.
Yeah.
Which team does your aunt like?
Auburn. Most of my family went to Auburn.
Okay. I never remember which one's which.
My mom went to Alabama. What else?
Oh, scandal.
Well, I mean, she went to like
she went to a bunch of
yeah.
No, I think it is interesting once I realized it was Alabama because now I have a kind of tertiary connection to Alabama.
Yeah.
Because like to you, Alabama is like your maternal ancestral
Yeah.
home essentially. Like you didn't grow up there. You spent a lot of time there. You
Yeah.
have a lot of connections there still. That's kind of like me with Montana. Like Montana is like I didn't grow up there. I spent lots of time there. I have lots of family members there,
Yeah.
so I understand that like that's kind of like my home away from home. It's like a
Yeah.
kind of, but like in a less sentimental way and more in a just like actually like
And it's also, maybe getting off topic, but it is something where it's like, oh, you go in and experience it, enjoy it, and then you go home.
Yeah.
It's not like you're not really tethered to it, or
yeah. I mean,
you don't feel trapped by it necessarily, or
I guess.
or
yeah.
whatever.
But I identified a lot with the small townness, and because that's a big theme with Edward Bloom throughout this, like big fish, right? There's that phrase, a big fish in a little pond.
Yeah.
Like he wants to be a big fish in a big pond. That's like his whole like ambition in life.
Yeah.
Right. Is to and he's from a small little town, and so anyways, back to the first little chapter. He's born in a small town. Well, before he's born, this small town in Alabama is, the story says, he's having a drought. It's had a drought for years and years and years. And then his mom has a vision that clouds are gonna come, and suddenly a cloud does appear in the sky, and everyone goes outside and looks at this cloud, except for the mom, who ends up falling down and giving birth. And as soon as he's born, it starts to rain in this small town.
So good.
Yeah. So like, I really enjoy this book as a nerd because there's so much like biblical and Greek and other mythology like in here. So like this is like, you know, the creation story, not really a creation of Edward Bloom. So it has that kind of element, but also a little bit like Noah's Ark, right? It's like, he has the water. There's a lot of water connectedness to Edward Bloom in general.
I would say, speaking on the you know, Greek, maybe even more the Greek myth, the thing that this reminded me most of, and it's definitely not one-to-one or anything, but spiritually, vibe-wise, I guess, or whatever, would be "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Yeah.
Because it's like in the South, there, you know, later on, there's more direct references to Greek mythology, and it's like, oh, I mean, it really, it's a, as far as I know, my exposure to it is it's a pairing of like there's two works that have this feeling, and it's these two. Yeah, I'm sure there's more, but
a southern take on the Odyssey,
and it's a very, not in like a bad way, but it's a very like as far as like Southern mythos, it's the white Southern mythos. Yes. So like it's just a different.
It is, yeah. It is very much like a white male version of the South. I would say in this book, it taking place in the South is not the most important element. Like setting doesn't play a huge thing. It does a little bit, right? But it's not like and often, you know, especially magical realism books, often the setting is a literal character, kind of like in Gothic novels. The setting is a character. The setting's not really a character here. I think it adds to the atmosphere, and it does like shape Edward Bloom as far as like small town and fishing and water, like in that way. But like, I wouldn't say this is like a nature forward book. I wouldn't say all of that. As he's growing up, he is known to be able to speak with animals. Like every animal is like, bro, you're cool. And he's like, yeah, I know. Then we have the year it snowed in Alabama.
You know, speaking of family things, that's kind of one of those things where it's like my aunts and uncles will be like, oh, there's that one winter when I was growing up that we were sledding down the streets. Yeah. And everything. And it's like.
Yeah. And it's a funny little thing. Like they make a 16-foot tall snowman, which that's as someone who grew up in a snowy place, that's a lot of snow to make that big of a snowman.
It's like a 2-story snowman.
That's a huge snowman. The roof of their house caves in, so they go and they spend the night up in trees. And then he has to walk 6 miles to school, but he left his homework at home, so he has to walk 6 miles back. Like it just adds to the kind of play on when we think of older family members telling us, you know, I walked to school uphill both ways. Like it plays to like that kind of effect, right? Like like you're saying, like, oh, that one year, you know, that it was snowing and it was bonkers, right? And it adds to that. And so the beginning is so playful, which I like that they kind of start this mythos of this man being like, I mean, this is when he's a kid still, you know, but like very like playful about it all.
Which just continues throughout the, you know, changes. But
it's also said that Edward Bloom has never forgotten a face or a name, and he's read every book in the small little town that they live in. And it talks, and specifically there's a phrase that says he was a big fish even then. Yeah. And this is like when he's growing up. And so we have the first setup of Edward Bloom going into My Father's Death, Take 1. In this first one, like we talked earlier, the first 3 specifically, these near-death scenes are very similar. We have William talking about how the doctor's old. His mom goes in first, comes out usually either like tearful or like laughing and tearful, saying like, you have to go talk to your father. And then there's some sort of conversation between them. In Take 1, I wrote down a quote that Edward says to William. So he says, I wanted to be a great man. I thought it was my destiny. a big fish in a big pond. Edward asks what makes a great man is if he is loved by his son. And then William, like, we hear his internal dialogue is like, do I tell him the truth? Do I say this nuanced perspective of him, or do I just kind of placate to what he wants? And he ends up deciding to say that he tells him he was a great man. Essentially, his version of saying, "Dad, I love you."
Yeah.
Right. Because we have all this lead up of this like man who, you know,
Everybody loves,
and he's like, he knows everyone, and he's, you know, he's very well read, and he's brave, and animals like him. And then we get this conversation between William and Edward, and this is the first like little bit of like, wait, is he a great man? Like, this is the first like doubt we have, and we see it through William, which I thought was very a fun way of entering and saying this man was men and people are not all like great people are not always great. Kind of the idea of like a nuanced person. Take.
Yeah.
Then we get the girl in the river, and this is a kind of a motif.
Sharks be like.
Then we get to the girl in the river, and this is kind of a motif that comes throughout. Like, water is very important to Edward Bloom and the story in general. Title is Big Fish.
Yeah.
Fish like water. Right, biologist?
Usually pretty associated.
Edward's out in the woods near a river, and he sees this naked girl in the river, and he's like kind of watching her, and just like he just doesn't want to like intrude and have her understand that she's being perceived. Like, it's a little bit creepy, but like we see this all the time in older books and stories, right? Is like a young man sees a naked woman for the first time in the water, but I'm gonna hide behind the tree so she doesn't see me, right? But then he sees a cottonmouth swimming through to go and try and bite her. So then he goes and he tackles essentially the cotton knife, and he ends up saving her from getting bitten. And then he turns around and the girl has vanished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a stick.
And it's a stick. It turns into a stick. Yeah. And it's like, okay, what? It's like, was that real?
And that does really set up kind of what I was like, yeah, what is magical, and then what is just a fantastical tall tale.
Yeah. And then we just get more and more myths of him growing up. Like he's very popular with the girls. One time he tames a giant that's like destroying the town. Like, he goes to sacrifice himself so that the giant won't eat the rest of this town. And the giant's like, I just want to know how to cook. He's like, I can teach you how to cook, man.
Yeah.
And then like saves the village with a giant, you know, a very classic fairy tale thing, a giant destroying a small town. There's a flood, and then that creates like this quote big lake.
Yeah.
Right. He goes fishing, and he gets this like 6 to 7 foot long catfish that drives him through the lake. And he ends up seeing the like neighbors that died in the flood, like living in a town underwater.
Yeah.
And he ends up not telling anyone about this because he's like, that's kind of a like. So he told William obviously later.
Yeah.
But it's like he didn't tell anyone else. But
which I wonder, because I mean, one of the most controversial moves ever was like in the South was the like of that time was the flooding from the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Yeah.
Basically creating giant dams and flooding out huge portions of the land. So I wonder if that had some like...
And a lot of those floodings did destroy specifically black populations and black communities.
And just, it wasn't just like a flood. Like they put them underwater.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe, I mean, I listened to an interview with the author that's at the end of the Spotify audiobook. If you have Spotify, you can listen to it. It's a really good interview. And I read a few interviews, and he didn't do much. He talked about how he didn't really do much historical research. He kind of just was writing this in bits. The most research he did was on different jokes of different time periods. Like, he went to like thrift stores and libraries and checked out old joke books to try to find specific jokes, because all the ones he knew from his family, his grandparents, and his granddad were like inappropriate jokes. He's like, this will offend everyone if I write this. And so I I wonder if this is just an event that stuck in his mind because I don't think he would have written this purposely to my with my current knowledge of Daniel Wallace, and maybe he is more, maybe he didn't do it on purpose to kind of reference those situations, but maybe it's just an event that he's like,
It could also just be overthinking it. It's flooding
Yeah.
is very biblical, and
yeah.
you get
And then we have the scene of a big fish, right?
catfish.
A big catfish. Because
Not a real big fish.
catfish being 6 feet long is huge, right?
Yeah, I mean, they get big. I don't know if they. There's also a bunch of different species of catfish, but I think channel cats can get pretty huge. But catfish are more like they're dense
Yeah.
than like
They're big
super
boys.
long. Let's see.
Biology break.
Yeah, there's channel catfish and like red-tailed catfish. Yeah, max report is 52 inches for a channel catfish,
Okay.
which is
So
not quite 6 feet.
6 feet would be a
A
real
big
fish.
one. Yeah.
Then we get to the myth that is the most Greek, like very obviously Greek, which is when the day he left Ashland. So this is like mimicking Hercules going down and like dealing with Cerberus, the 3-headed dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
I missed that.
to leave Ashland, you must pass through the place that has no name, which is full of people who tried to leave but were stuck. Right. And so he's going through this old kind of ghost town and he's meeting these people that he recognizes. Some of them he's never met before, some of them he has. And they're all like either missing a finger or part of their hand. And he's just like, that wasn't how you left
Yeah.
the town. Interesting. And then there's this dog that's poking around and he learns from his like guide in this town that dog is the gatekeeper of who can enter and leave.
Yeah.
And he realizes that this dog like has bitten people's fingers to essentially curse them to stay
And also, everyone in the town is trying to get him to stay.
at the town.
Yeah.
Yes,
They don't want him to go
yeah.
out.
And they all wanted to leave either because their partner died or they want to go seek their fortune, whatever it may be. They're all trying to escape something and are not able to, and they're stuck in this kind of purgatory of being neither the small town or where they would like to be.
Yeah.
But because Edward Bloom purely wants to be a big fish in a big pond, and he can speak to animals, remember? He was really good at that. He's able to like befriend this dog, and the dog allows him to go, and then the dog kind of follows with him. And at one point, it even talks about how the dog like shakes his head, and it looks like he has 3 heads. Like it's very
Okay.
obvious that it's like this is
Cerberus.
Cerberus, right? Which it was.
I think it's a
fun.
golden retriever, right? It's something like.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like something big and scary. It's
Yeah.
just a dog. But he is able to go and enter into the new world, and immediately he gets beat up.
Yep.
Right? He gets beat up. He loses all the money that he had, but he arrives at a house, and he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to make it. I can help you on your farm." And he ends up helping this farmer, and quote invented the whole idea of buy 2 get 1 free.
Oh yeah, at the general store. that they
Yeah.
have.
The general store, and he invents the idea of a country store.
Yeah.
Right, the title. And so we have this transition of him leaving the small town, able to go and chase his dream, and suddenly, even though he's still down on his luck because he got beat up and all his money got stolen, he is now like turning into the businessman that he has always been.
It turns it almost into like a creation myth, but for like modern or
Business.
or not modern, but yeah,
Yeah.
20th century business.
Because he's time-wise, he's like I said, the 30s, right? Yeah, so Edward Bloom is growing up in the 30s. So like towards the end of the 30s, because he ends up going to war in a later chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the end of part 1. So in part 1, we have him from birth until he leaves the small town.
Yeah.
In all part 1, with one of the deathbed scenes. Part 1 is his trajectory and growing. Part 2 is more how he like interacts with people, kind of. And maybe it's not high school, maybe it is college. It must be college. Because there's the frat guy. It must be
Yeah,
called.
okay. I was gonna say
it's called.
the fates.
Yeah, because we get to part 2 and we have the old lady in the eye. Which,
So yeah, I totally whiffed on catching the like Cerberus thing. Getting out of not it's purgatory is like the Catholic version.
It's not really purgatory.
There's like the fields of whatever in
I don't
Greek.
remember the levels of Greek hell confuse me, and every time they show up in whatever books I'm reading, I'm like, whatever. It's all bad, guys.
The fields where you're just stuck there. That's very was that the town.
Yeah.
But sorry, going back to this, I did catch because it's even more obvious the fates connection that comes up
With the eye, yeah.
With the eye,
Which is funny because I didn't connect it to the fates.
Oh,
But I caught Cerberus.
they have an eye that they pass around to each other.
Well, yeah. No, I know that.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But I just didn't think about it in this context, like through this myth. But he goes to Auburn because he's like, this is where he goes to university. At
War
Auburn.
Eagle.
Huh?
War Eagle
War Eagle?
is like Auburn's.
They're the War Eagles?
No, they're the Tigers, but War Eagle is like their fight song or fight chant. It's a thing. They have an eagle that flies around before the game,
But they're the Tigers.
but they're the Auburn Tigers.
I mean, I'm glad they don't have Tiger running around.
Yeah.
Interesting. So he goes to Auburn and he ends up living with this old lady. She has a glass eye, and her eye gets stolen by this frat because it's a big part of frat culture to do pranks on poor old ladies. And Edward ends up infiltrating their frat, being like, I want to join them, until he gets to like the initiation process where they all are in like some like barn, and he ends up bringing the old lady to the frat initiation, right? And she confronts them, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And but he remembers specifically because he remembers faces. He remembers the face of the leader of this frat because he ends up marrying that guy's girlfriend.
Yes.
It said. Yeah.
Got him.
Got him. Yeah. And then we get to My Father's Death, take 2. Similar setup, but William asks his dad about God in heaven, and Edward Bloom, who's like, he's a big boisterous jokester, like he's never serious.
Yeah.
Never serious. Everything's a joke. And he tells a joke, and William asks him why he wasn't ever serious, and Edward continues to avoid any sort of seriousness, and it frustrates William to no end.
Yeah. I mean, he like walks out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the jokes, it's not just like when Edward's telling them. They show up kind of all the time in the way William talks about his dad. Mm-hmm. Like in the stories he knows about his dad, a lot of them are just like, here's the jokes he used to tell me and stuff.
Yeah. He adds in the details of the myths. There's always some element of the jokes in there. He'd be like, and my dad would say this, and this is the part where my dad would mention this funny thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the next part, which is how Edward Bloom ends up marrying Sandra, William's mom. So they're at school, and he sees Sandra kissing some guy. And he's had this crush on Sandra, but he's never gotten the attention from Sandra, but he has had the attention from other girls. So he's like, I want her. And he realizes the guy that she's kissing is Dom, the guy that stole the eye from the old lady. And so after Don and Sandra stop kissing, Edward Bloom goes over and asks Sandra out. And she says yes. We find out that Sandra had just been asked to marry Don, the guy who stole the eye. And it was this big moment where Sandra was like, it was fated to be with the eyeball thing, right?
Fate, wink, wink.
Yeah. That I was going to marry you instead of Don. And of course, Don is upset because his girl just got stolen. And Don drunkenly drives a car and chases them. And then there's Don and Edward fight. Edward wins, but Edward also takes care of Don and makes sure that he's safe.
He's not just a fighter, he's a lover too.
He's a lover too. Then they end up getting married and they move to Birmingham, where, of course, Edward Bloom is proficient and succeeding at everything he's doing and loved. And he starts out first by cleaning animal kennels, and then he ends up selling lingerie at a department store. But then also he ends up saving a kid from a wild dog, and he rips out the dog's heart,
Temple of Doom,
Indiana Jones style.
Yeah. He's gonna befriend this dog because he's great with animals, and
Yeah.
it's gonna turn out to be something's bothering the dog. No, he just Shaka Khan it.
And took it all out. Yes. And then we have a little chapter of when he goes to war. So he ends up being a sailor on the Nereid, which is like a nymph-like creature, a Greek reference in water. And the ship that he is on gets torpedoed and it starts to sink. But again, because Edward Bloom is a superior person, before he jumps off the ship, he looks to where he's jumping. So he misses all of this oil spill. And then he ends up falling down into the ocean, and he's thinking, why am I not drowning? But then he sees the girl that he had seen earlier in the novel when he was a younger man, that naked in the stream, that he saved with the cotton mouth slash stick.
Yeah. Yes.
And she gives him the ability to breathe underwater, and he's able to swim far enough away that he avoids all the oil spill, and he's able to yell to his fellow sailors to be like, come here, this way, away.
Come here, boys.
Very siren song, yes. But he is able to save a bunch of his fellow sailors before the ship goes under and like sucks them down. So I thought it was interesting that they added this little bit about the war, because this is not a war novel, right? It's not about Edward Bloom's PTSD with war, like a lot of similar stories to Big Fish, where it's about a father-son dynamic and the father being not, and not necessarily jokingly, but like not fully sharing himself with the son. Often in this time period especially, it's because of war.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's interesting that they added this war bit in here, and in listening to the interview with the author Daniel Wallace, he was talking about how he had biblical myths in here, he had Greek myths in here. He's like, oh, I need to add a war myth in here, which is like a very popular literature thing. And it is interesting, I think, that it's not about him going around and like being the strongest soldier.
Yeah, he's not Rambo 1v50, tearing it up and throwing grenades and everything. And no, he's trying to save his boys.
Yeah, and he does. We get to My Father's Death, take 3. And here William's asking his dad to be serious, but his dad keeps joking and joking and joking. And stories about how he had a dreams when he was a kid, and that he always knew when he was going to die. And it seems so serious at first, but then it all leads up to, it's all a big story, a big joke.
Yeah.
And it's, not necessarily like a kind of joke, but it is like a story, not reality or not the truth. And it's every time we have a deathbed scene, I keep like wondering, like, obviously these myths we're hearing from William about his father are myths, like they are fantastical, like they are ridiculous. But it's like each time we have the bit of like quote reality, the real chunks, it plays more and more on like the whole novel itself, like how much of this are we taking real, how much are we not? And I love the play of that so much. I like not being like, I don't know.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to know.
That's the whole point.
I like it.
It's kind of crazy that you like it.
Why?
Because I think sometimes you like to know if things are
real?
For real or not.
Well, I like it in a novel that is in the fiction section.
Fair.
That is not about me and my personal life.
Okay. That's very, very, very different things.
It is very different. Thank you. Then we get to the part where eventually William is born. And this is the day where, when he is born, instead of, a drought ending like when his father was born, instead, when he's born, Auburn beats Alabama for the first time in years.
Oh, yeah.
And this...
very culturally significant extremely.
Yeah.
Like, college football is crazy in a lot of places. Auburn versus Alabama is
Huge.
it is. It's crazy.
It's huge. And I think of all the different myths in here, this one is the most like, this probably happened, or like close enough happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I remember I was watching with my family when Alabama tried to kick a field goal, and Auburn was like all but gonna lose the game, and then they caught the ball and ran it back, and it was like maybe the most energetic sporting thing I've ever been around. There's like 10 people.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's
and I think
and
it's
the-
also interesting because like we have all these different elements of myths, but like sports myths are
Yeah.
a huge thing, especially in like this time period of male culture.
oh,
right?
SEC football. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
And so I think it's interesting that they add that bit in here because William doesn't seem like a sports kind of guy,
Yeah.
but it is connected to his story and him and his dad's story.
Yeah.
William goes on to talk about how fatherhood changes Edward. And even though he's like working a lot, he goes away and works and comes back on the weekends. Edward puts together a list of qualities that he wants to pass down to William. And reading this, because we're reading it from William's telling us,
Yeah.
it's like, are these the qualities that William thinks he has of his dad, or are these the ones that one day Edward Bloom was like, son, I want you to have these 5 qualities I have, like, and either seems realistic.
I think I read it more as like these are the aspirational qualities.
Yeah.
But
I think it's interesting that William's reporting it back to us, the reader,
yeah.
about this. So like we get to decide, does that happen? Yeah. At one point, Edward Bloom saves William's life because William is playing when he's 5, he's playing in a ditch. And there's a sudden huge flood from a river. And they played on a swing that wasn't secure, a la Bridge to Terabithia.
Hmm.
The swing.
I thought she fell into the river. Or did she fall off a swing? Oh. Dang. I'm not going to go back to read that to check.
Don't worry, I have a podcast. You can listen to it all about it.
Sad.
It was very sad. Anyways, so William's playing on this swing and it wasn't secure enough, and he ends up flying, and then midair, his dad catches him.
Yeah.
Like a football. Apparently, there's like an element of immortality to Edward Bloom where he like falls off a roof and is fine at one point.
Yeah.
And
He like falls into some bush. It's like, but because of the whole like, is it real or not? This really happened, but the whole like, is he magically lucky or is it just dumb luck? Because he falls into some bushes off the roof. So
or did he not let William as a child know how much pain he was actually in?
Yeah.
Like, is it just William's perspective? Oh, my dad was fine when he fell off. Really?
Yeah.
He wasn't. We don't know. But it adds to the whole idea of immortality through stories, which is a big part of Edward Bloom and a big part of this book in general. But it's like a more physical version of immortality because he falls off a roof,
Yeah.
And then William talks about how his greatest power is making William laugh. Like, he's like, my dad's greatest power is that he always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And I think that little bit was like very like not mythic of him. This version is like, no, this is true. Like, my dad's a lot of things, but his best thing is that he makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Which is like, even on this like painful, like long deathbed situation going on, like he's constantly, even though William keeps saying, I want seriousness.
Yeah.
His dad's like, we're going to laugh.
We're going to have a good time.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have a good time.
Yeah.
Then we get to part 3. And this is in which he buys a town and more.
Oh, right.
And this is where it gets a little wonky, because up to this point, this is the part where I was like, what? Like, everything up to this is like, okay, we have a complicated relationship between us, father and son.
Yeah.
We have a complicated man who, he has a lot of armor around him in this form of like stories and humor and like, oh, look at this, my great life. Like, we can kind of take that in stride and be like, oh yeah, I'm sure this is like a metaphor for stuff.
Yeah.
But then it gets to this part, it's like, what? He buys a town, which is mythic in its own way. Like, who straight up buys a town? But then it gets way more complicated in his like actual reality,
Yeah.
but it's not really that touched on.
I think there's also a big jump between, being the big fish, where in the last section he was starting out in the big pond. He's in Birmingham, which is
Well, big pond for Alabama.
yeah. No, I mean,
yeah, it's a big city.
yeah, succeeding in the city.
Yeah.
But then it was just like working his way up to being something, and now it's like, from a financial standpoint, and
Yeah.
now he's got money.
Yeah.
He's very successful.
Yeah. So he goes from being a big fish in a small pond when he grew up.
Yeah.
Then he goes into being big fish in a big pond, the city, throughout William's childhood. And then part 3 is he's going and he's looking to go back to being a big fish in a small pond. Is that what you're saying?
He's buying another pond. Well, it's just like an extra
He's
tier.
just buying
of,
a side pond.
Yeah, side, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So he goes to the small town Spector and he drives. Another thing about Edward Bloom is he loves driving around slowly.
Yeah, loves a good meander.
So he loves to drive around slowly, and he goes to Spector and he goes all around and he decides that he first spies the land surrounding Spector.
Yeah.
And then he slowly starts buying every single house and business, but he's like, "Hey, homeowner, I'm going to buy your house. You can live here rent free. You don't have to change anything about your life. I just want to own it." And he goes to the stores and he's like, "I'm going to buy your store. You don't have to do anything different. Just kind of tell me how's it going occasionally." Yeah. But that's it. And so he's like this like benevolent owner of these people's lives, essentially. Like he becomes almost like a god.
And they all
love him.
They all love him. And he's not doing it to like get their adoration.
No.
But he has this like need to own.
Yeah. Yeah.
But keeping it he wants to keep it kind of like almost frozen in time.
Yeah. And so when he comes and he visits, and then at one point some guy that lives there is like,
"Oh, you don't own it."
But you don't own everything. He's like, "What do you mean I don't own everything?" He's like, "Oh, well, there's that marsh that has that old house and you don't own it." He's like, "What? I've never seen this marsh." And so he goes into this marsh and he walks through and he ends up finding this like trail that kind of comes out of the marsh and it's to this house. And he goes and he meets this young lady whose name is Jenny Hill. And he like falls in love with her and he like talks to her and he ends up bringing her into town and shows her this empty house and be like, "This could be yours." And she ends up living with him there at the house. And we're assuming he buys up the marsh.
Well, she wouldn't sell to him the marsh, right? Or did he? I forget.
She wouldn't at first, but until they fell in love.
Oh, okay, right.
And then I think that's part of the reason why he really likes her is because she's like, no, Anyways,
he wants what he can't.
I'm not Freud or whatever.
Very funny.
But he becomes kind of like a normal sight. Like he's around town all the time. And then when he's there, he lives in this house with Jenny Hill. And the folks inspectors start talking and telling myths and stories about Edward that mimic the stories that we've already heard in part 1, right? So he talks about how like animals like him a lot and all the like the rain stuff. Like they start telling myths about him that are very similar to the ones that we, the reader, have just heard. But then he comes back less and less. And as he comes back less and less, Jenny gets depressed and the house slowly gets kind of like, it doesn't get taken care of, and the yard slowly turns into a swamp. And so this new house eventually turns into the swamp house from earlier.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I loved that shit. And I was like, this is for me, this mythical, like magical realism of just being like the original house is, her depression, and then like she's better, but then she's still depressed, and like it turns back. Oh, I love it. I love it when a house turns into stuff.
Big Monster House fan?
Never read that or watched it.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know what it is. Anyways,
it's a kid's like Frankenweenie type thing.
Yeah. But because this Jenny's house has turned back into a swamp, Edward can no longer like really have her because she's now put the guard back up, right? Yeah. So it goes from how like he wanted her, can't have her, then is able to have her, loves her, creates this kind of little side life with her. Yeah. And then as he pulls away because of life and other things and him traveling around slowly, driving, then she puts her guard back up, and then Marsha's back, and he can't have her. And I'm just like, oof, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that little chapter. But it's our big complication that we kind of see with him. It's like so far throughout, as far as Edward and William's relationship, the big thing is that he's not serious. Everyone loves him. And also he was away for a lot in childhood. And we're like, okay, I mean, that kind of sucks that your dad wasn't there a lot. But then we see he had another life.
Yeah. He was the second family traveling salesman.
Yeah. And then we get to the chapter of how it ends. So this is not the last like bedside death scene. It's right before then. So we find out that Edwards is dying of cancer. Like it's everywhere. Throughout the last year of his life, he swims a lot because it's the last.
I was going to bring up because you kept mentioning, the water's a through line, and it was talking about how he didn't really care, like he liked fishing and being in the river, but they had a pool and never really used it until he really started using it during the cancer treatment. It's like the
last bit,
to the point where like it was starting to get not cleaned enough and turning green. And
he was turning green, and his skin was getting like a little bit scaled, almost
like the flash of a fish. And yeah.
And he at one point he ends up passing out in the water, and William pulls him out, and that's what makes them move from the house to the hospital.
Yeah.
So then we get to My Father's Death, take 4, which is the last bit. And he's at the hospital and he's in a coma. And so because he fainted or passed out in the water, he's in a coma. And they're all around him. And when eventually it's just William and Edward in the hospital room, William,
and there's
he wakes up and he asks William for water. Because every time in these My Father's Death scenes, he always asks for water, a glass of water.
Yeah.
And so he asks for water, and he asks William if he was a good dad, right? And then he ends up telling him his favorite joke there.
Yeah.
And this
suit.
And again, we're mimicking the other 4 scenes of this. This one's a little bit different, where it's a little bit calmer, a little bit less. I mean, there is the joke at the end, but like it's less of a battle between William and Edward. And then the very last chapter is called Big Fish. So they're in the hospital. Edward asks William if they can leave. And William is just like...
This is where they crank up the magic to like...
Yeah.
Level 10.
Level 10.
Level 10 magic.
And
cool realism. Yeah.
And William agrees and wraps him up in a blanket, and they like run through the hospital. They run to the car. His dad's like giving him commentary. He's like, "Where did you park the car?"
Yeah.
Like very like old man bit. And they drive, and William doesn't know where he's driving, and Edward's just kind of like trying to guide him there. And William says out loud, "Oh, we're going to Edward's Grove."
Yeah.
And his dad's like, "What's that?" And then here we have, this is William naming the place that his dad would take him, and the place near the water. Like he just named it. Like William here is the one naming it. It's not like Edward was like, "This is my grove." It's like William's like, "Oh, this is my dad's grove."
Yeah.
So it kind of puts some like it puts more authorship of these myths onto William.
Yeah.
And like he has more of a hand in these storytelling than at first we think of.
Yeah.
Because at first we think it's his dad just telling these big
and he's
tales.
just relaying it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so William carries him into the river.
Hold on. Before that,
Yeah.
he asks for water again.
Yeah.
But he like dumps it on him instead of like just drinking it. He just like pours it over his dad, who's like under a blanket in the seat. Which I don't know. I thought that was like a very like, something's happening.
Something's happening. That William carries him into the river, and as he's holding his dad in the river, he starts to wiggle around, and his dad ends up turning into a big fish.
Yeah. He's like, "Don't look at me."
Yeah. And that's how it ends.
He jumps in the river, and then it kind of cuts, or it jumps forward to like, and there's all these new myths about this fish, messing with anglers or giving children rides and stuff. And it's like, the stories are continuing out. And in true magical realism form, it's like, okay, is that really he really turned into a fish, or is it this like metaphor for like stories carrying on to the next generation?
Why
And
not both, Isaac? Why not
Yeah.
both? I mean, I I love the idea that because we have all this water metaphor throughout the myths sections, and also him getting fed water by William every time William's talking to him, it ties all the myths and the real together
yeah,
right there at the end. And I love that because we take these my father's death, take 1, 2, 3, and 4 as so real, like those are
Yeah.
reality. And
because
here at the
it's
end,
always like the
just kidding. And I love that.
I'm still because I just finished this a couple hours ago. I think this is where, because I was thinking of this from a just being somewhat grief forward, or like processing death and the afterlife and everything. Initially, it kind of felt like a get out of jail free card, or like, oh, we don't have to, like, it's an ending where everything's happy instead of like,
I mean, it's not happy.
well, it's not
like
sad.
it's not sad. I mean, it is, and it's not. And I think also why I really like the ending, because it's not like, and then I held my dad's hand as he died.
Well, that would also,
I mean, it kind of is that. It's just that his version of it is I held him in the water.
Yeah.
And he died. But in his death, he became something else.
Yeah. Transformed into.
Yeah. Because it adds, because it's so, like, Edward and William are so concerned about the idea of stories throughout this. Like, Edward Bloom wants to be remembered as this mythic person.
And a good dad. Those are pretty much the two.
Yeah. And then William is like, I want the truth of these stories. And even in their conversations, they talk about how the truth changes depending on the storyteller. Like, that's a big thing in their conversations. And, we see the mimicking of myths from the people in Spectre, the town he owns, versus the stories that William himself has heard and is retelling at the beginning. And yeah, I love the ending.
I think the more I sit with it, the more I like it, though, because it is.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I liked about this, I don't have like a huge repertoire of magical realism, but this one leaned into being a little more in the mythic, a little more magical stuff going on.
Yeah, and in a way that's like, because of the vignette style, because a lot of the magical realism I've read have been more classic version of a novel where it's like there is a running through plot from A to B, where stuff happens, or they turns into more of like a gothic kind of story where like an inanimate object is like an antagonist of some sort, like the house is actually trying to kill the people, like like The Shining or whatever, right? There's more like those kind of situations.
Yeah.
And whereas this, it's like we get these vignette stories that have connections to each other, that play off each other, that are mimicking and echoing, but they also can be read like short stories almost.
Yeah, they are. It's like short stories attached to the
which makes sense because the author himself, this is his first published novel. He had some published short stories in like writing magazines, and I'm not sure if he ever made the New Yorker, but like things of that sort. Yeah. He wrote a bunch of novels that never got picked up before writing this. So this was not the first novel he ever wrote, but it's his first novel that was ever published. Yeah. And he has since published a bunch of novels. Also, I was like convinced. I was like, I'm going to do my research. I bet we're going to find out that this is inspired by his dad. No. He's like, this is not inspired by my dad. He's like, when I was writing this, my dad was healthy and alive. Yeah. We had a fine relationship. Yeah. Like, we weren't best friends, but we weren't enemies. Like, he was my dad. Yeah. Unfortunately, his dad ended up dying. Like, he's even said it. Wallace has said in interviews, like, the editing of this novel was done before my dad got sick. Like, he ended up passing because he was a big drinker and a smoker. Yeah. He ended up passing before the book was published. Oh, but like printed, but it was done before. Yeah. He's like, I think I took some inspiration from my granddad, but my granddad was a jokester, but his jokes were all very inappropriate. Oh, right, never used those jokes. So none of this book is really autobiographical. He's like, I just liked the idea of myths, and I wanted to write new versions of myths, and I was a short story writer before, so I was new to that genre, but also he was writing this when his son was under 2 years old. So he had to write it whenever his son was taking naps.
Yeah.
So he talks about, he's like, certain chapters are shorter because the sleep window was shorter and I only had 20 minutes to write. Whereas other ones, he slept for longer and I had over an hour to write. So like he had that time constraint
The physical,
physically writing this book, which I found interesting. The father-son aspect is not inspired by truly real life. Like he's like, it is in the way that I am a father and I am a son.
Yeah.
But it's not like I had this big event. It's like I want to write about this myths and about the myth of a man, and can stories make us immortal, and the power of mythology, because he's like, I'm a nerd and I've loved mythology my whole life.
I think it's also, I really like that extra background provided about, it's all these stories about, these larger than life stories about breaking the constraints of reality to do all this stuff. And it's like, and I had to write around my son, my child waking up. Yeah. And it's like, I was very constrained, I had very real life happening while writing this. I think
I really enjoyed the book.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I think I gave a 4.5 stars, maybe 4.25. Like there's some bits that were kind of like, okay, let's keep going. Like the middle, I was like, let's keep going. But I really loved
it's short, so let's keep going is not too bad.
Yeah. I really loved the setup. I loved the idea. I loved the way it made me think about things, and I loved the ending.
Yeah, for whatever reason. And I was almost thinking I was a bad, and this is I guess where my brain's been. I think I was almost like I was thinking I was a bad pick for this because I haven't had like serious like grief or anything to work through too much. I've been pretty lucky in life so far, and I thought, and I guess when I was reading through it, I kept framing it in terms of like grief or upcoming grief. But I don't know, maybe just the heaviness of death or whatever.
There's the heaviness of death in here, I think. I mean, were there like anything about grief that you like, as you read, you like, I don't know.
I guess just trying to, or maybe it was more of the like, when William is trying to like connect with his father or do all this stuff like before he dies. I think so. Maybe it's like
there's that anxiety there.
Yeah, maybe it's that more than actual grief and healing. It's more handling heavy stuff before it turns into grief. I don't know. Yeah, that's something that like stayed with me throughout. Yeah, kind of all the stuff. Also, we didn't mention the old doctor who's older than old.
The old doctor who's older than old.
It's like it's just well written. Like
it's well written. It's very Americana.
There's also something there's something about the South and myth that is really interesting, and someone who's much smarter than me should tell you about it. But it just, I think it's similar to Appalachia, where there's so much just nature there for things to disappear into, and odd things can happen and things go bump in the night, but
No. I am interested to read some of his other stuff. I might look at his short stories.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you, Isaac, for choosing this book.
Yep.
And reading it.
I had a real good time reading Big Fish.
Real Big Fish. And next week we will be watching the film adaptation of Big Fish. So follow us on your preferred podcasting platform so you don't miss that episode. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. Rate us 5 stars. If it's not 5 stars, don't worry about it. And remember,
read the book first. Ding.